Hello and welcome back to part 8 of our Brothers War Limited set review. Today we'll be covering the white commons and uncommons. If you haven't already seen our review of the colorless commons and uncommons, in that episode we go over the rating scale, so please check that out here. It'll help kind of set the standard on how we go ahead and do the gradings. Alright, up first we have Lauren's Escape. It's 1 white mana for an instant. Target artifact or creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Scry 1. These are always, these 1 mana protection spells are always fine filler. I'm usually looking to get more out of a card itself, like actually being a threat itself, but they're fine. I'm going to give this a D+. It's, decently strong filler, but that's all it is. Up next, we have Military Discipline, 1 white mana for a aura enchantment with flash, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, enchant creature gets first strike until end of turn, and enchanted creature gets +1/+0. I do kind of like this trick. Again, I like my tricks to be cheap, like two mana or less. This is 1. It does require some setup, but it usually won't actually cost you a card. It will, after you're engaged in battle, you flash this on in, it saves your card, kills one of theirs, so it's kind of a 1-for-1 trade-off in that. And it does stick around as a +1/+0 as well after that. So I don't think that, it doesn't blow me away, but this is a playable. I think this is a C- playable. Up next, we have Survivor of Corliss. 1 white for a 1/1 first strike human soldier creature. Pay 1 and a white, exile Survivor of Corliss from your graveyard, scry 2. I like First Strike on a 1/1. Again, my favorite ability. And the fact that she can have some impact after she dies, scry 2 is kind of like draw a card. I like that quite a bit. And this is fine if you need a cheap creature. It's a soldier, so it will play into your cheap soldier strategy. You probably only want it there, though. I'm not going to give it a synergy grade, but in general, I am looking to get more impact overall out of my cards. I think you will play this sometime. I'm looking for better. That's basically the definition of a D+ there, so I'm giving it a D+. Up next, we have Ambush Paratrooper. For 1 and a white, you get a 1/2 flash flying human soldier creature. You can pay 5, and creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. A 1/2 flash flying for 2 is a fine rate. Usually I like my creatures to have 2 power for 2 mana, but this does have a pump ability, which will be relevant some of the time, especially in your soldier decks. I think it's a playable card. I think this is about a C-. Up next, we have Deadly Riposte. For 1 a white, you get an instant with deals 3 damage to target tapped creature, and you gain 2 life. This is playable, but I don't love these cards that are conditioned on the opponent's creature being tapped before you can deal damage to it. I've also seen, usually these effects are like destroy target tapped creature rather than deal 3, so it can't even kill their best creature. It does gain you a couple life, which maybe kind of makes up for a little bit of the not killing any creature. It's a playable, it is removable, but this is on the low end. I think this is a C-. Up next, we have Disenchant, 1 and a white, destroy target artifact or enchantment, instant. This is a staple reprint in a lot of sets, but in this set, usually most sets, it's sideboard material. In this set, there's so many artifacts, this is main boardable, and I think this will be pretty good. It is still conditional removal, but it is cheap, so I think this is a C, just a solid playable. You'll want these in your decks. Up next, we have Phalanx Vanguard. For 1 and a white, you get a 2/2 human soldier creature with vigilance. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. I like a 2/2 vigilance for 2, just base rate, and this has upside on top of that. I like this card quite a bit. I think this is a C+, one of your better soldier creatures that you're going to want for your soldier decks. Up next, We have a Power Stone Engineer. For 1 and a white, you get a 2/1 Human Artificer creature. When it dies, create a tapped Power Stone token. Alright, again, I love my cheap things that end up creating Power Stone tokens. It is worse that the Power Stone token does not get available to you right when you play this. This thing has to die before that happens. But it's still a 2 mana, 2/1 that has a significant upside in the Power Stone token. That's enough for me to give this a C+. I think this is a good creature you want. C+ grade. Up next, we have Recommission. For 1 and a white, you get a sorcery with return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters the battlefield this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This is a good rate. 2 mana to return a 3, or maybe a 2, even a 1 possibly, mana value creature to the battlefield is good, and then getting a +1/+1 as well, quite good. The problem is that for this to be, this is not good early, right? You need something in your graveyard before this becomes good. And usually for my cheap spells, I want to be able to not have them be conditioned on a whole lot before I can play them. I want them to be good early. Yes, what this is really good for is double spelling later in the game, and I think, like your soldier decks, for instance, you'll be wanting to do that a lot. This will be pretty good in a soldier deck. But I'm going to count this as just good filler right now, D+. I can see myself coming up to something like a C-, maybe Synergy C in the soldier decks, right? But I'm giving it a D+ right now. I just think the context of where you'd play this. It's a later spell that you could double spell with where this really becomes good. Up next, we have Airlift Chaplain. For 2 and a white, you get a 1/1 human cleric creature with flying. When it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. You may put a plains card or a creature with mana value 3 or less from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, then put a +1/+1 counter on it. Alright, so base rate, this is a Windrake, right? 3 mana, 2/2 flyer. Which Windrake isn't, it's meh, they're, C-, C type range. So this fills that role, but the fact that you can draw a card, which is the better side of this, and I think you'll hit fairly often with a plains card or a 3 or less mana creature, makes this decently good. I'm going to start this off at a C, because even when you get the card, which is better, you end up only having a 1/1 flyer left behind. I think this is a C. It's borderline C+. I like this whole series of draw a card, cheap creatures, and I can see myself possibly coming up on them even more as the set progresses, but starting with a C. Up next, we have Prison Sentence. For 2 and a white, you get an Aura Enchantment enchant creature. When Prison Sentence enters the battlefield, scry 2. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So this is similar to Pacifism, right? Enchant creature can't attack or block for 2. It does cost additional mana. The additional mana is worth it, though, for the extra abilities of making sure they can't play the activated abilities of the creature, which is important, especially in a set filled with Power Stone tokens that can activate those abilities. And the Scry 2 is a big win as well, which is just a little less than drawing a card. So I think this is a good card. Yes, pacifism type effects are not as valuable in a set where sacrifice theme is a thing, because you leave something around for them to sacrifice at that point. But this does quite a bit for 3 mana. I think you're going to want this card. I think it's going to be a C+. Up next, we have Union of the Third Path. For 2 and a white, you get an instant with draw a card, then you gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Okay, so this is not unplayable. It is a cantrip that gains you, maybe a decent amount of life. But I don't really see a reason to play this unless I'm trying to do the draw 2 archetype, which is really more of a blue-black thing. It's not worth a card to just swap a card, gain some life, and not impact the board at all. So with that, I'm giving this a D. I think this is pretty bad filler. I'm tempted to even go D-, but D it is. Up next, we have Warlords Elite. For 2 and a white to get a 4/4 human soldier creature. As an additional cost to cast the spell, tap 2 untapped artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control. So at first look, this is above rate, right? A 4/4 for 3, but the having a tap 2 things makes it really not above rate. It is nice that the set is full of Power Stone tokens. Those could be tapped for this, unlike when they normally could not be tapped to cast a go towards the mana cost, right? But that's still expensive. Ultimately, it's kind of like paying 5 to get your 4/4. I think this is a playable, but I think this one is on the lower end. I think this is about a C-. Up next, we have Yoshin Medic. For 2 and a white, you get a 1/4 human cleric soldier creature with lifelink. It's a decent blocker, but it's not enough stats for 3 to do anything that you really want. I think this is a D. I wouldn't play it. Up next, we have Aeronaut Cavalry. For 4 and a white, you get a 3/4 human soldier creature with flying. And when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another target soldier you control. This is a better version than the 5 mana 3/4 flyers we've seen in the past. It comes into play those 5 mana 3/4 flyers are usually like C-. And this one adds a +1/+1 counter on something. That's a decent rate. I still don't want to play a whole lot of 5 mana creatures in this set that are not artifacts, right? So it has some contention there. It does enough, though, where I don't think I can give this a lower grade than a C, even though I'm tempted to. I almost want to go to C-, but I'm going to give it a C. Up next, we have Lay Down the Arms for our first uncommon in the set. For 1 white mana, you can exile a target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. You'll want this in your mono white deck, so like the rest of the series of cards that care about the number of particular type of basic land you have, you're going to want this in mono white. It's playable in a very white heavy deck that's not just mono white. But you're really not interested in it otherwise. I'm going to give this a Synergy C+, but won't be playing it too often, as I don't think you'll be monocolored that often, but it will come up. You will be monocolored some of the time. Up next, we have Meticulous Excavation. For 1 white mana, you get an enchantment with 2 and a white, return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it has Unearth, exile it instead, then return that card to its owner's hand. Activate only during your turn. This one's interesting in that it actually undoes the Unearth piece, right? So this does the, if you have a card out there that is already unearthed, so if anything we remove it from the battlefield, usually it would go ahead and die in exile. Well, this goes ahead and exiles it to begin with, and then you can put it into your hand later. So this creates a card out of the Unearth. Granted, like the rest of the series of enchantments that do nothing, it's a card that does nothing itself and just gives you the ability to do other things. I'm not a huge fan of that in Limited. It's hard to judge. I do think there's a place for these. I'm starting most of these off around the C- range, including this one. We'll see where it plays. I'm just, until I'm proven otherwise that these are really an engine that you want, I'm skeptical of cards that do nothing until you pay more. So I'm giving us a C-. Up next, we have Recruitment Officer. For 1 mana, you have a 2/1 human soldier creature. It has 3 and a white. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I like 1 mana 2 power creatures. That's efficient, especially ones that can dig for my other best creatures. So this is good early. This is good late when you can just pay straight up 5. Like put this on the battlefield for 1, pay the 4, get a card out of it. I like this. I think this is a slight pull into the soldier deck. I have this at a B-. Up next, we have Calamity's Wake. For 1 and a white, you get an instant with exile all graveyards. Players can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Exile Calamity's Wake. Yes, this nullifies Unearth, but it does so on both sides. It can keep your opponent from doing their return from the graveyard stuff, all that, but you really need setup to do this. It's not worth a card putting this into your main deck. This is really just a sideboard. Ultimately, I don't even think this is really worth a card. I think this is more of a constructed thing. So I'm going to give this a F. Up next, we have Lauren, Disciple of History. For 3 and a white, you get a 3/3 Human Artificer legendary creature. Whenever it enters the battlefield or any other legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. I like a 4-mana 3/3 that draws you an artifact out of your graveyard. That's a good card, especially in this set. I'm going to give this a solid B. I think this is a pull into white. Up next, we have Static Net. For 3 to white, you get enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Static Net leaves the battlefield. When Static Net enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and create a tapped Power Stone token. I don't love this costing 4, but it is removal that gains you 2 life and gives you a Power Stone. So it's highly playable, not quite a pull into white, but I think this is a C+. Up next, we have Thopter Architect. For 3 and a white, you get a 2/3 Human Artificer creature. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains flying until end of turn. If you get enough artifacts into play all at once, you can get a bunch of your creatures to have flying, swing out, and end the game. But that takes some synergy to set up, and I don't think it will come around that often. And unfortunately, the ability is tied to a creature that is already under rate, so I don't like this too much. I'm going to give it a synergy grade for when you can set up that massive evasion attack. I'll give it a synergy C, but unless you can do that, I don't think you really want this. Up next, we have Great Desert Prospector. For 4 and a white, you get a 3/2 Human Artificer creature. When it enters the battlefield, create a tapped Power Stone token for each other creature you control. So I already liked a 5-mana make 3 Power Stone tokens. That was in green in our last one. I like a 5-mana 3/2 create somewhere between probably 2 to 4 Power Stone tokens. That comes into play with a 3/2 body. I will say it does not count itself as a creature for that Power Stone token ability, and this has a little bit of the effect of if you are winning already, win more, which you don't want. You'd rather have the when you're losing, be able to come back to win. But this still is a really good card. It will help your ramp, and I like it a lot. I still think this is a B. Up next, we have Repair and Recharge. For 3 white, you have return target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Create a tapped Power Stone token. This is return your best thing and ramp. I wish this had a cheap mode like the black one had, but this does do enough to pull me slightly into white. I like getting my best thing back and making a Power Stone token for ramp. B-. Up next, we have Mass Production. For 5 and a white, it's a sorcery with create 4 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. This is a go wide thing, but I don't really see the point on spending 6 mana for 4 1/1s. I really think this should have been a mana less to be considered playable, but they are soldiers, and this would work in the soldier go wide theme, and I think it is playable there. I'm going to give it a synergy C-. You're only going to want this in your soldier decks, and I think you'll want to play it there, but I still don't think it's a high pick or any kind of a bomb or anything like that. Synergy C-. And that's it for white. Thanks. See you soon. Bye.